that we want to have classes for all the monks in the Vedic arts. So that means music, dancing, singing, literature, art, stage, acting, playwriting, script writing, and of course the video and all the production knowledge and all that stuff. So, the devotees were going, well, we already have so much stuff to do. How are we going to do this extras? Well, the point is, I want there always to be a next step, and a next step, and another one, and beyond that, and more and more and more. You never get to the end of it. So this is another thing that encourages us to keep advancing. It's not that, I just find this little tiny area of knowledge and I learn this and then that becomes my whole devotional capital, so to speak. No, we should have a broad conception of devotional service. Our idea of devotional service should include all kinds of things, even financial management and economics and social management, and how to structure a community, and architecture and agriculture and everything that's necessary for a complete civilization. You see why this thing takes so long to learn? Because it has so many different branches, and all those branches have to be kept in the proper relationship to the main goal, which is developing love for Krishna. So it takes, a few years to really grasp all this. And in the meantime, in the beginning, maybe we think, oh, I'm here to solve my problem. And I have this problem. It's called material existence. So I want to solve my problem. I want to get out of this material existence. But you can't really solve that problem without solving the whole ball of wax. How are you going to get out of this material existence unless you're living in a transcendental community with spiritual values and spiritual activities? How are you going to find the time to become self-realized if you're living in a community that has an economy based on exploitation, like we have in today's corporate society? See? How are you going to find the freedom? How are you going to find the facility? If the standard of life is so high that you have to work like a dog your whole life just to maintain a house and family situation and all that. See? It's better to have a simpler standard of life, not a lower standard of life, but a simpler level of material opulence, and then you have energy for all these devotional arts, which are so wonderful. See, people are seeking pleasure in material things, thinking that money and opulence are going to make them happy. But all they do is bring more worries. I'll never forget the first time in my life that I had money. I had like real money. Somehow or other, Krishna had arranged that I was placed in an influential position in the computer business. And this was like in 1994, 1995. No, even earlier. No, wait a minute. When was that exactly? It was like 1980, actually. It's this is before Windows came out. It was still in the DOS days. And I happened just by some friends of friends to get a job with a certain company who was doing like the cutting edge software development in operating systems. And I became the documentation manager for the development team, and I learned all the internals of the software system. So I suddenly found myself in so much demand. I had more work than I could handle, and I was going around to all these companies and being content provider for all their user documentation, and I made a whole bunch of money very quickly. It was the first time this ever happened in my life. And all of a sudden I found myself with, the house in Carmel and the Mercedes in the driveway, and my private music studio in the spare bedroom, and office full of computers, and all this stuff. And I remember it hit me. I was thinking this was pretty cool, you know. And I remember one day it hit me, because I came home, I had a Saturday off, you know, which was actually kind of a rare thing, because I was working so hard. I had a Saturday off, and I got to the end of the day, and I realized I just spent the whole day taking care of my stuff. You know, it seemed like there was infinite amount of little chores to do around the house. You know how you can spend a whole weekend just puttering around and doing little stuff around the house, and it seems to like eat up the whole weekend, and before you know it, it's like time to go back to work, and you say, what did I do? You know? So I got to the end of this Saturday, and I went, wow, I didn't get to enjoy this day at all. It was just like one little thing after another. It's all about this stuff. And then I realized, because I had never had that much stuff before in my life, I suddenly realized that stuff eats up your soul. It eats up your time. It takes up all the spare time that you could use for improving your life and actually enjoying spiritual life, which is the only thing that's actually enjoyable in life. And instead, you wind up just all engaged in this little trivial material stuff, you know? And about the only advantage you can say to it is that it gives you kind of a feeling of security that, oh, I don't have to confront the big questions of life or solve the big issues in my life, you know. I can just sort of stick my nose in all this stuff and root around sort of like a pig, you know, in the mud. And then I don't have to really look into these things that are the real cause of my suffering. I can distract myself with all these toys. Great. So you can do that. You can go on doing that forever and get to the end of your life and you haven't solved the big problems of life: birth, death, old age, disease, suffering, anxiety, ignorance. Then what? See, we live in a culture of denial. We even have so many taboo topics we can't talk about. Death, for example. We don't understand life, so how can we even start to confront death? So we even have a whole cast of people, the undertakers, that take care of all the issues around death, right? And their whole mood is based on not communicating about certain issues. You know, like, you know, they have this whole language that like avoids the D word. You know, oh yes, your loved one has passed on. Great condolences. You know, it's just like all flowery words with no substance. The whole point is to avoid discussing any of the substantive issues about death. See? That's the culture that we live in. So when we live in a culture like that, we can understand that people are going to just distract themselves from the real issues of life, and without the guidance to approach these issues and solve them once and for all, that they're probably never going to do that. And they don't do that. So they just whittle away their years, and then they get to the end of their life, and they start wondering about the big questions, and it's too late to even begin to solve them. Because the real solutions depend on a background philosophy that takes 10, 15, 20 years to learn. You see? It's a big piece of work. And it has to be that way. It can't be cheap. It can't be simple. I mean, it's simple to say, well, just love Krishna. But, you know, first you have to purify your heart of so many anarthas to love Krishna. And a lot of those anarthas have to do with ignorance about the real problems of life and so on like that. These are anarthas. These are undesirable things in the heart because they will distract us from this love of Krishna. If we haven't solved these other problems first, how are we going to be able to think of God at the time of death? We're going to be in fear and panic at the time of death. So this is the science of life. This is how to live. This is how to be successful in actually overcoming the main problems of existence in this material world. This is a big deal. And it takes a major effort. Getting a college degree, or getting married, or getting a nice career. These are trivial things in comparison. This is nothing. The real thing is, how do we solve the real problems of life so that we don't have to come back and be in this situation again? Once you have solved that problem, then you can say, okay, my life is successful. Because we see so many people had good position, nice family, big career, lots of money, lots of power and influence, beautiful wife, lots of children, everything in material life, and yet they still had to die in a state of ignorance because they didn't solve the real problems of life. So they were unsuccessful, even though from a material perspective they were considered successful people. Yet they still die like dogs and cats, ignorant of the real nature of